Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Hammer, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me today, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you on location?
Doing well, doing well. Didn't make it to practice today. Had this planned day off a little while ago and made some plans over in San Jose. So that's that. But we'll be at Golden State tomorrow. Doing well. Doing
All
well.
right. And of course, we have Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. Sean, how are you?
I am fantastic. Just killed a fantastic sandwich, I must say. And you guys had to watch me. It was a little odd. I felt like a zoo animal.
He just killed it, very literally.
Poking the bear.
But feeling, it was, boy, was it needed. I hadn't eaten anything all day. So, fantastic. Just got back from Kings practice. We get to overreact to a whole lot of dumb shit that happened over the past couple days. And
Tuesday overreactions.
Yep. And I'm ready for it. Let's bring it.
You're ready for all of it. Okay, so if you're watching here on YouTube and you don't mind, give us a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel if you aren't subscribed. We're back doing our normal stuff. Brenden and Sean and I, we've been at practice nonstop. We've had games to cover. We've had chaos, dogs, cats living together, total chaos. Let's start at the beginning. We get to practice. Okay, so I will tell you, I did not go to practice on Friday. I had a meeting at work. But I noticed that Kevin Huerter wasn't wearing the standard jersey, right? He was wearing the second team jersey. And then we got to practice on Saturday. He was wearing the second team jersey again. So we asked Mike Brown about it. He said Chris Duarte would start. And that kind of snowballed. I think it snowballed pretty substantially over the last couple of days, where it's become like, oh, has Kevin Huerter lost a job and all of these things. But let's get to the initial reaction of, when we go to a game, and of course Chris Duarte gets hurt. He's okay, it sounds like, but he's going to miss the next preseason games. He's got a bone bruise in his left knee. But what were your guys' thoughts about just the overall idea of replacing Kevin Huerter and sliding Chris Duarte into the starting lineup, whether it was for one game or whether it was for two games or whether it's a possibility that he will be the new starting shooting guard for the Sacramento Kings? And I guess, Sean, we'll start with you.
Well, okay. I think it was interesting. Mike Brown too talked about how, regardless if Duarte had not gotten hurt, the plan was for Kevin Huerter to start the second preseason game against the Warriors, which would be the fourth overall Wednesday night, which is coming up as we record this, and then that Duarte would have started the Thursday game, the back-to-back with Utah back in Sacramento. And typically, and James and I had this discussion off air several times, this isn't so much football as it is basketball in preseason. And when a guy, sometimes we get led into the practice facility, we're not seeing all of practice. And Keon Ellis had a black starter jersey on at one point. And oftentimes guys will switch jerseys in middle practice just to get them run with other stuff. So what made it interesting about that though, was media day, right before media day, right around media day, and the days that followed media day. Mike Brown made a point of saying, I'm not going to tinker too much with this. I'm not going to tinker with the starting rotation. We're going to give those guys a full go. And here you are, 0-3 into the preseason. Not that the record really matters, but obviously there's some funky moments that you see with not only the starters, but even the second rotation and deeper into this roster. So it was only a surprise to me that Kevin Huerter would not start based on what Mike Brown said previously. That said, this is what preseason is for. Tinker away, do what you're going to do. You don't have to show your entire hand. And I think we know that the Kings don't really go too deep into their offensive sets for preseason. De'Aaron Fox talked a little bit about that today as well, which is, they haven't opened up the entire playbook. Defensively is just where they're really trying to make the most strides. And Chris Duarte brings that, and Kevin Huerter doesn't bring that as much. In fact, Brenden and I were talking after the last game, Kevin Huerter showed the ability to be a better defender than he has in recent memory. And I think when you couple that with Kevin Huerter not shooting the basketball very well, really dating back to where he went and represented Sacramento in 3-point shootout, it kind of culminates to letting Mike Brown tinker away. And I say tinker away. Go ahead, do it, because that's what this is for.
Tinker away. Brenden, I kind of we had this moment where we went into the locker room after the game on Sunday after Kevin Huerter had come off the bench. And, I think one of the cool things about the Kings Beat podcast, at least from my angle, is that, Sean and I have been doing this forever. And there are a lot of times where we're allowed to see this through Brendan's eyes, and which is like a fresh set of eyes on something that we've covered a million times over. And this to me was like a really cool opportunity for you to be in a really uncomfortable spot. And I know that sounds kind of strange, but it's not super comfortable to sit there and ask a player who may or may not have just lost his job about losing his job. And
Well, hold on.
I didn't to what
He's
I feel
not
like
losing
Sean is
his
about to
job,
say.
James.
I didn't go into it thinking that was the case. So I think
you understand what I'm saying, though, Sean.
Yeah.
He didn't lose his job, but he may or may not lose his starting job. We don't know at this point.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Brenden.
I thought he was pretty. I wasn't even thinking about that going into it. Honestly, the way that Kevin kind of went about answering those questions and being very short and just, seeming a little agitated, I guess, right? With the fact that he wasn't starting that night was kind of the first moment to me of this is something, because I went into the game thinking that, they probably just want to get Duarte more reps with Sabonis. The best way to see if somebody can get accustomed to the offense is put him around 4 guys that will run it very smoothly and see if he can fit with that. Or maybe you're testing the first guy off the bench and who that sub would be, or maybe you're testing closing lineups, which is honestly more important than starting lineups. But I really, given with what Sean said, I think it's a week from today, last Tuesday, Coach Brown said that, the second and third unit could be changing, but the first unit's probably not going to get messed with. So I wasn't really thinking much of it going into it, but yeah, I mean, Huerter's approach to that was definitely interesting. He seemed a little frustrated to not be in that starting group. I thought it stood out when he was asked kind of what the conversation was like leading up to that moment, and if this was going to be a long-term thing. I believe you asked him, James, and he said he wasn't really sure. That coach just told him this is going to happen for the week, and then you'll reevaluate from there. So, and when he got asked how Duarte do, his response was he played hard. And that was his entire response about Chris Duarte. Personally, I think he could have talked up Duarte a little bit. It's his new teammate and been more of a, internal competition is good. And I personally thought he could have handled it a little bit better just from my personal standpoint. But I get the frustration. And I think as long as that eventually turns into motivation to be better, which Coach Brown at practice today, I caught up on some of those clips, was saying that he's already seeing increased physicality from Huerter and hopes to see it climb. So I thought it was weird, the level of frustration that seemed to be there. But if it turns into motivation, then that's a good thing.
Yeah, I enjoyed the moment, to be honest with you, because we were walking over. I'm like, hey, go ahead and take the lead. And I had a pretty good understanding that Huerter wasn't going to be too receptive to I'm not even sure why Kevin came in the locker room, to be honest. He didn't have to be there. And I thought it was a solid move by him, but it did kind of expose the frustration. Right. And I was kind of intrigued to see how you handled that, because again, this is about learning, and it's about we've been through a coach getting fired, and it's one of those moments where it's okay, well, what questions are we asking? No, we got you. We know where it's going. We've been through this quite a few times. I thought it was you handled yourself really well, and I thought it was again sort of an intense moment, because Kevin took it there, and he was very almost stern and very short initially. And I think he loosened up a little bit, but I also feel like it was awkward. It was totally awkward. And I thought he answered the questions. He didn't go into great detail on a bunch of stuff. But then, I thought even Tony asked him a question pretty bluntly to say the least, and it kind of caught him off guard a little bit. And I thought that was like an interesting moment as well. So, like it's training camp, but it also could easily spill into the regular season. Sean, we were there today. Was there anything more that you gleaned from what Mike Brown had to say about this situation and what we might see going forward?
I'll also say real quick, Huerter
Yeah.
may have been also slightly agitated because he just found out his Giants lost a pretty BS ending on Sunday Night Football.
And he was wearing his Giants shirt.
He was wearing it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that it's very true, but also he hadn't seen what had happened yet, so I think it was like I'm sure he wasn't too happy to watch his team
Yeah.
but
And the Giants are a hot mess too. He knows.
Oh yeah, he does.
Because
he does.
He talked a lot. He talked him up though. He's a very arrogant sports fan, which I like about him. It's fun to mix it up with him sometimes.
He's a New Yorker for sure. He's
Yeah.
definitely a New York, and I think maybe that's what we saw. Brenden was a New Yorker, like trying to, like that's what it kind of felt like at a certain point. It's like, oh, that's more of a New Yorker than Kevin usually is when he was answering our questions.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
I
Sean.
mean, before I get to the Mike Brown stuff, I'll full transparency, I wasn't able to be there for that because I was on deadline. I would have liked to have been. I did see Kevin in the hall when I was exiting the locker room. Didn't think he was going to speak necessarily, but was kind of glad that he did. I'm glad that you guys had a moment to talk to him, whether I was there or not. And what I took from it is, yes, he should be disappointed because, quite frankly, he hasn't been playing well, and I think he knows that. And I think, look, it's certainly preseason. Okay, I know there's a lot of fans that have a tendency to group what happened, last year, and then trickle that over into the preseason, and like, oh, this guy's trash or this guy's not. Just remember the way Kevin Huerter played at the start of last year. I mean, that guy couldn't miss. He showed a defensive intensity that I thought was much different than what you're seeing through a handful of preseason games. Kevin Huerter might look at it very well and say, I'm the scapegoat right now. I'm being the one taken out of the lineup. But the team hasn't looked cohesive in any of the games. Again, not a problem because it's preseason, but when you're hearing about so much continuity and really familiar personnel and not a whole lot has changed, obviously they're making some subtle changes to the offense, and there's a lot of emphasis on physicality and, being able to defend without fouling and just improve defense and team defense overall. You're still mixing in a ton of people, and a lot of guys are playing with people that aren't going to be rotational players. So you have to take everything with a ginormous grain of salt. And I think Kevin was annoyed.
A big grain of salt.
Yes. I think Kevin was annoyed that he had been kind of taken out of the lineup. I think he should be annoyed. I think he is annoyed with the way he's playing. I think he should be annoyed with the way he's playing. I think he's annoyed with the way the team has shown that they are a little janky to start. And again, no one should really be surprised by that because it is preseason, and they're going to have, even when the preseason games are out of the way, they still have a week to figure some things out and kind of game plan for what's ahead. And look, guys, everyone enjoyed last season. They still stumbled out of the gate in 0-4 and had moments that they looked completely inept at times. That's all well and good. I'm not as shocking as this is. I know you guys will agree. Nobody's surprised or shocked or anything here. I don't think they are either. But I think Mike Brown, to go to your question about today, James, is what I took from that is I think he's trying to make guys uncomfortable. And if he knows that something bothers a guy, he's going to do it. He's going to be the poke the bear guy. He's going to go out there. He's going to jump the shit of Malik Monk if he gripes at the officials. He's going to call out a guy when he doesn't do something right on the defensive end after missing a shot, as we've seen in a video earlier this week. Some of you guys saw it live. He's going to be the guy that, oh, you're uncomfortable about being taken out of the starting lineup. Well, guess what? We're going to do that. And all you have to know is just know your history with Mike Brown, who started last year at the very beginning of the season and had people thinking he was going to be a highly rotational player, was KZ Okpala, and that didn't happen. Trey Lyles was not really...
He said he had defensive player of the year potential.
Right. And then you have Trey Lyles, who, had the eye of Mike, lost the faith of Mike, and then got it back all of a sudden. So the NBA is a long, long season, and there's a lot of overreaction to moments like this. This is what preseason is for. And to be honest, it's not that I know the Keegan Murray moment when he was hurt and Sasha comes in. You want to see these guys play with the upper echelon players. I think I brought it up today at practice. I thought it was really interesting. We're seeing Colby Jones play with higher rotational pieces than some of the tertiary players that he was playing with earlier, like Summer League and Stockton Kings type players. I think that's a really interesting sign because I think there's a faith in Colby Jones and his comfort level that he has already, feeling like it's a step or two forward from what maybe he should be. I think there's a little bit of a faith there that he can fit a system that they have and be impactful and do a lot of stuff on defense and be a tangible like do address a lot of the intangibles on offense as well. And he pushes the pace, man. Like him and Davion, that was fun. Davion made in that preseason game against the Warriors in that second half, inbound pass to Davion, one hand just shove ahead, football pass to Colby Jones who drove it in the lane for like the touchdown. It was really nice. I mean, they're pushing the pace. So again, it's not to say that Colby Jones is going to be the 9th or 10th man on this roster, but this is what they want to see. This is what the preseason is for. And you know what? It's not like the second unit has been knocking it out of the park either. So Kevin Huerter, if he is taken out of the starting lineup at any point during this season, and if it does become a permanent thing, make no mistake, Kevin Huerter is still a valuable piece to the rotation. He's not going to see himself out of the rotation. That would be the surprising part, is to see if he truly did, quote unquote, lose his job.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think we can all agree that if we go back to the history of Mike Brown, that Chris Duarte, if he's healthy, which again, that's the big if he's healthy, he is a Mike Brown type player. Like he's multi-positional, he's physical on both ends of the court. I didn't love like the pull-up 16-footer he tried to pull with an elite defender and Gary Payton on him. I thought that was like, oh boy, like we don't need to see that. But overall, this is like a player that is kind of built for Mike Brown's system. And, he's even if you in a weird way, he's a little bit like a young Doug Christie when Doug Christie was kind of going through and finally found himself on the Kings. He kind of gives you that vibe as well, where he can play defense, he can handle the ball, he can pass the ball, he's really good off ball, he can shoot the ball, like all of these things that he's a very well-rounded player. He might not be the best of the best at any one thing, but sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. But that's okay because at the end of the day, like somebody has to do the dirty work for this team in the starting five. And that's what I've seen from him early on is like a dirty work guy. So I don't really even mind that. My problem is that it presents so many complexities, right? So if Kevin Huerter isn't the starting shooting guard, he's also not the backup shooting guard. Everyone knows the backup shooting guard is Malik Monk. So what does that mean for Kevin Huerter? That means he's now the backup small forward. And we already have a log jam at the forward position, whether it's Harrison Barnes or it's Keegan Murray or it's Sasha Vezenkov or Trey Lyles, like all these guys trying to fit them in some sort of rotation. And I think coming into the preseason, we all thought, okay, we kind of know this is a 9.5 man rotation. I think that JaVale McGee has thrown a wrench into what our thinking was. And now I think Chris Duarte has thrown a wrench in what our thinking is. And then if I'm Kevin Huerter, I'm looking at this going, okay, could I be in trouble here? Where I'm not like I'm in the rotation, but if I'm backing up Harrison Barnes and also Keegan Murray's playing the 3 as well, where I might be looking at like a major reduction in minutes. And that's where I think like Kevin has to like figure out how he's going to fight his way back into this situation and battle through and make sure that Mike Brown knows that he's the guy that started 75 games for this team last year.
So they definitely just started drilling right outside the door, and I'm pretty confident you guys won't be able to hear it, but it's pretty loud on my end. So if you do, my apologies.
We don't hear it.
I think it stopped for a sec. It will start up soon. I think what it comes down to for Chris is that he's done everything that Mike has wanted. There is...
there it is.
Can you hear
there
it?
is the drill.
Can you hear
yes,
it?
there it is.
But tough? It's not bad. Go ahead.
Okay.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I think he's done everything Mike has wanted. Like we've heard the word physicality, I feel like hundreds of times. And Chris is probably the most physical guy out there. He did a great job battling with Clay, I thought, in that last game. He gets around screens, great. There was a couple times that he's gotten posted up by opponents throughout the course of this. There was one Christian Wood got him on a mismatch in transition. I thought he did a good job. And then recently against Clay, I think Clay hit a really tough turnaround, but Chris made him work for it. He's pushing the pace well. And I think he's just really been doing everything that you want. And Kevin's not the only one guilty of this, but when you put him out there with the rest of the starting guys, he kind of looks like the guy that you wish would be doing more of what Mike Brown is talking about.
Yeah, I get that. But I also I need more rebounding from Kevin Huerter. There's other things that I need more of. It's not just this playing defense without fouling. It's not just being physical. And Mike has really done a good job. If you guys watch the videos, Mike has done a really good job of showing us what he's trying to do. Like, I swear he's beat up on Jason Anderson a couple of times, like throwing the guy around and trying to show exactly what he's trying to do. And I think it's interesting that Mike does that, where he's really laying it out, where he's showing us exactly what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. But I think that it doesn't change the fact that if you're Kevin and the coach says he's talking to everybody and this is a move he's making and it's not personal, it's like everyone is doing this thing wrong, but he's going to make this change. And then you're looking around like, how come everyone's doing it wrong, but I'm the one guy losing the starting job for this week?
Well,
that's go ahead.
Yeah, to that point too. Like, I also think there's a thing is building a player's confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll remember, look, Chris Duarte, he was injured last year, didn't have a good year. He comes over here, it's a new situation. Obviously has a familiarity with Domas and a handful of others, but really needing a enormous confidence boost to show that he can be. And that first game, I mean, he was very honest. First game action in 209 days. And he looked like it. He looked absolutely awful in that preseason game. We talked about it. Followed that up with a really tremendous, I thought, effort again in Anaheim. And, I thought he was good against the Warriors, and Brenden did a great job of outlining some of those areas. And you're right, Brenden, especially in the pick and roll. Like, you can see where he gets it. He gets around screens very, very, very well. Rewarding that. And I think that's what it ultimately comes down to. Here is the preseason. Reward it. And you're giving a guy an absolute confidence boost. And doesn't mean he's going to start opening night. Doesn't mean he's going to be a starter 10 games into the season. But at the same time, you're rewarding what you see. And can he continue to do that? Can he remain impactful on that end? And with those players, let's see what it looks like with Domas. And ultimately, guys, what I think it comes down to is whether he starts or doesn't. I think Mike could be a little different in the way he adjusts the usual substitution patterns. Like, we would see Domas come out very early in a lot of games last year, and by the time Fox is ready to come back out, Domas is back in. He may start to tinker with that a little bit. And he talked about how substitution patterns coming up for Wednesday's game in San Francisco, how that could start to look a little bit more like what they would see during the season. And I think the starting block for that is emulating what you did last year. But do you tinker with that? Does that change at all? Just especially with the way that things have been playing and what guys play better with other players. Like we've seen a lot. We've kind of talked about what we like when we see De'Aaron Fox and Davion Mitchell play together. At times, do they do that? Do they try to do that more? Duarte playing with Domas more, obviously having that familiarity. So it'll be interesting to see if Kevin does come off the bench, what rotation he's typically playing with, because it won't be a full hockey substitution. You're going to have starters within that unit as well if he's coming off the bench.
Yeah, and there's while we wrap up the Chris Duarte conversation, there's a couple of things. Number one, Chris Duarte is a third-year player, even though he's 26. He has a fourth-year option that I'm going to assume the Kings are going to pick up at any moment. Same with Davion Mitchell. They both have fourth-year options, which just means that you have to pick up his contract this year for next season as well. It's at like $6 million. He's actually a good bargain, especially since they got him for two second-round picks, which was like a 2028 Dallas Mavericks pick and a 2030 Kings pick.
In a way, dumping Rashawn for the pick helped bring in Duarte, since you didn't bring back any, or you didn't send out any salary.
No, totally. Yeah, I think like it's all part of a bigger puzzle, right? When you're switching these things out. The other thing, there's something interesting about Chris, which I didn't know coming into even like into training camp at all, and that is that English. I mean, I think we knew English isn't his first language, but like we've heard it a couple of times from different players where there's a language barrier. And I thought it was interesting, especially with Domas, to say that when we had Domas a couple of days ago about Chris, like, hey, yeah, some of it is like language barrier stuff, and we're like language, but he even has like, I don't want to call him a translator, but he has like an aide there that's working with him. And I bring this up because it's funny because at the beginning of the year we didn't know what we were going to get with Sasha, right? We're like, "Hey, what is Sasha gonna be like?" And then we hear him speak, and you're like, and then he walks in the door and he's like, "Hello, I am Sasha Vezenkov. How are you?" And he's just like this suave dude. You're like, "Hey, okay, you got a grasp of like 4 different languages." And I don't know what Sean just said because he has
You
his
should
mic
do
off.
that again. You should do that again. I
No,
want to hear that one more time. Damn it.
yeah.
All right.
But you understand what I'm saying. Like
Yes.
he's put together. He's like, yeah, I got this, right? And he can own a conversation. Like he has dramatic pauses. He like Sasha's really good with the media. Well, that's not what Duarte is, and he's working really, really hard to get better. But this is something that I think people might miss. It's not just that he's playing with Domantas Sabonis, the player that he played with for a season and a half to open his career in Indiana. He is playing with Domantas Sabonis, who is 100% fluent in Spanish and can sit there and converse with him and direct him and tell him what he needs, like make adjustments on the fly in a comfortable setting. Because again, Chris Duarte, he thinks in Spanish. That's the way it works when you're not when there's a language barrier. He's thinking and then translating. To have Domas there on the court, and they've got Jordi Fernandez, and they have other people that can speak Spanish, but on the sidelines. But when you're on the court in game action, I think that that's something that's also missed. That Domas is actually like a big brother and someone that probably helps Chris Duarte feel very comfortable on the court, as opposed to someone else that could have been in that position, or him playing with the second unit that he doesn't know nearly as well. So I think that it's just a small thing, but I actually think it does matter in this situation, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so outside of that, do we have any
last
other
thing real quick on Kevin? I just want to add,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt, is
No.
I don't know how bad you can hear that in the background.
No, it's
is
fine.
that he's really good, man. Like I feel like a lot of people are focusing on all the things Kevin does not do well right now, but offensively, he led the team in offensive rating last year, and it's right next to De'Aaron and Domas, since they all played so well, much together. But he shot above 40% from three on more than 6 attempts a game. Him and Keegan Murray are 2 of, I think it was 12 or 14 guys in the entire league to do that. His pace is ridiculous. He's great in transition. I think he does a good job. Like there were times, as you guys know, in years past where you get frustrated with Buddy Hield because it's like, man, they're taking away your 3-ball, cut to the rim. I think Kevin's really good at doing that. And
He is.
A lot last year, coach kept talking about his pace in the half court. He's sprinting through their actions in the half court and able to stop on a dime, get readjusted midair, shoulders straight, and knock it down. So I just want to reiterate, like Kevin is extremely good at what he does, and what he does is extremely valuable and just as important as it gets, next to 2 guys that really their strength is scoring around the basket in De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis.
100%.
Yeah, actually, Brenden, I want to add to that. First of all, Kevin Huerter was the 3rd leading scorer on the Sacramento Kings last year. He averaged 15.2 points per game. He also finished with 1 fewer 3-point shot than Keegan Murray. The reason why you didn't really hear about it is because Keegan Murray was a rookie setting a record. He also averaged 2.9 assists per game. He was tied with De'Aaron Fox with 1.1 steals per game. And he's one of the better 2-point field goal percentage guys in the league as well. He's really good around the rim. Like he is a very good player, and he's under contract for 2 more years, and he's after this year, I believe, and he's young. He's one of the younger of the whole group of 20 of the guys that are 23 to 26, 27. He's on the younger end of that. He just turned 25 years old. And you're right, Brenden. It should be pointed out that there are a lot of things that Kevin Huerter does well. And we want to see it, but I'd also make the caution because I was on the radio with D'Lo and Casey the other day, and Kenny said, "Well, like why are the Kings doing this for a guy like Chris Duarte?" I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What are we? Let's not forget who Chris Duarte was.
Know your
Because
history, yeah.
Chris Duarte, as a rookie, averaged 13.1 points per game. He shot 37% from three. Was a defensive stalwart for the Indiana Pacers. He was a very good player. He was an all rookie second team player. But in addition to that, you have to remember that Kevin Huerter walked into this last season. The most he'd ever scored is 12.1 points per game. So he had got to, his rookie season, 9 point something points per game. He gets up to 11.9, and then he hovers right at 12 points a game for 4 years. Chris Duarte averaged more than that as a rookie. And maybe it's opportunity, maybe it's other things. My point is that Chris Duarte is actually a ball player. He just had a whole bunch of injuries last year. And whether he can shake that or not is a big question. But he fits what you're doing, and there's a lot of good to him. So I don't think we should be they're both good players. They both can help this team. And I think the Kings are better if they're both in the 9-man rotation, 10-man rotation. If that makes sense.
Typically so many of those rotations, you look at starters around the league, how many times you see a team that has that defensive starter that plays 12 minutes, where everyone else has a boatload of minutes. There's one guy that typically has a significantly less minutes. And not saying that's going to be Chris Duarte or even a player like that on the Kings, but you see a lot of teams that do that they want to have a guy who's primarily known for defense to start the game. And then typically they sometimes don't get the run that others get.
Yeah. And remember, the Kings, they're not going to have any problem scoring. It doesn't matter what five are out there. They're not going to have any problem scoring. This team is a juggernaut, and we're seeing them toy with teams right now and not use a bunch of their offensive play sets. I think we're going to see this. We've seen a couple of times with the starters where it was holy cow, when they start cooking. I mean, the first 5 minutes of I think his first 3 minutes against Golden State, Domantas Sabonis had hit 2 threes and had 11 points in 3 minutes. It's just what in the world? I mean, he's been pushing a triple-double in the first half the last 2 games.
They put up 38 in that opening quarter.
Yeah.
And he had 11 of their first 17, and the pace was incredible. The ball wasn't hitting the floor very often.
Mm-mm. No, I think we're going to see.
Sorry, I was just going to say, I also think Fox has looked amazing. The 2 All-Stars have looked in form. I like that Domas was taking those jumpers. I don't think it's a coincidence we saw that against Golden State, especially at the beginning of the game. It didn't really see it much in the rest of these games, so I hope we see it a little more. But Fox has been great, getting to the rim whenever he wants, finishing great. And I actually think he's been maybe the most improved defensively, very early on, obviously.
Certainly, that's what Mike Brown said today, that he thinks that on the defensive end, that's where he's been really, really impressed. That Fox completely changed who he was on the defensive end, and his intensity is just different. Should we be concerned that Harrison Barnes has 2 rebounds in 3 games? Or is this just come on, let's not worry about preseason numbers?
That's a good question, actually. I thought about that last night. I think it speaks more to the fact, and this is why I brought it up to Domas before the game, the Warriors game here in Sacramento. They finding rebounding help on this team. They might as well have a treasure map, and they're just lost in the desert somewhere, because rebounding outside of Domas Sabonis is terrible. It's non-existent, and that concerns me a great deal because it was a problem last year. Certainly it was a point of emphasis and a need, but team rebounding just hasn't been there. I think you could argue it's been better at times, but Harrison's not a real, it's rare when he gets over 10 rebounds. He doesn't really rebound that way. I think you'd love to see Keegan do that, but he doesn't really do that very often. I don't know. I think it is a concern. So I think it's a glaring weakness on the team.
Brenden?
Was it a problem that much last year, or was it just Kevon Looney?
No,
Like,
it
Well,
was
the
a
Knicks. It was
problem.
Kevon Looney and the Knicks. It was Josh Hart, right?
Yeah.
Who just demolished the Kings.
Right. I think Steven Adams had a big one, but I mean, they were 25th in opposing offensive rebounds. Like, I don't know. I didn't think it was horrible that often last year. There were a couple times where it's like, okay, this is pretty tough, but I didn't think it was the worst. Like, I don't know. They
were one of
definitely
the
could
better.
use help. And to answer the HB specific question, like, I think this is kind of, we know who he is at this point. So, obviously you want him to get a little bit more boards, and that's part of the physicality, but I don't know. I didn't think it was a super glaring issue outside of the Warrior series.
Yeah, I mean,
Domas makes up for a lot, obviously.
he does. He leads the
it's
league,
just,
and yeah,
right.
that helps. It does. I'm trying to get to advance. There we go. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the Kings were one of the better defensive rebounding teams in the league. They finished number 6 in the league in defensive rebound percentage, so 73.1. They were tied with the Clippers, 6 and 7. Overall rebounding, they weren't great because they were really bad as an offensive rebounding team. And, they finish it at 17th in rebounding. And offensive rebounding, I believe they're like 23rd in the league in offensive rebounding. They're not a good offensive rebounding team, but very specifically, I think there's a reason for that. It was because in the first 2 weeks of the season, they got their asses kicked in transition. And Mike Brown said, "Okay, no one gets to crash anymore. You got to get back. We're not doing that anymore. You guys
Right.
can't be adults and crash the boards and get back and have each other's back." And so I think they went away from it. But yeah, Brendan, I think you're right. They weren't horrible. They were a good defensive rebounding team. A lot of it is Domas. I mean, the dude basically like carries the world on his shoulders when it comes to rebounding for this team. But I have to see more. Even like Sasha Vezenkov, I'm like, hey, 6 boards. You mixed it up. I think there were multiple times where you're like, oh boy, the athleticism. That's where you started to see the athleticism. He can't rebound outside of his zone. He's got to outthink everybody. He's just got to go magically know where the ball is going to be and show up there. If he's in the post and he's going up amongst 2 or 3 dudes, he's not getting the ball. Although he did have a couple of tip outs and stuff like that, but I still think like he can be a little bit of a brawler down there, and he can actually provide something for you. But I honestly, it happened about January, maybe as early February. Harrison Barnes just stopped rebounding. His number just he went from like 5.5 rebounds a game to 3.5 rebounds, 3.2 rebounds per game the whole second half of the season. And I thought it was a weird thing that happened. And I maybe it was because he was shooting more threes. Maybe there was some sort of reason for it. But either way, there were too many games with 1 or 2 rebounds last year. And if the Kings are going to be successful, they need him and Keegan and Trey Lyles to step up and actually and JaVale McGee to step up and actually become rebounders. Is there anything that has surprised you guys so far in training camp outside of the Huerter Duarte situation?
Well, I'll go first. I think, yeah, to me, it's the cohesiveness. I think I expected them to look more like a kind of finely tuned machine, if you will. You see it in stints, you see it in moments, but defensively, they're still just a lost cause. I mean, it's they're all over the board. I think you can find defensive effort in spots, but them not really being able to put. I was hoping they would have a more better response in the second quarter coming off of that first quarter against the Warriors. And again, they were without Draymond, Steph, and Chris Paul. Jonathan Kuminga kind of kicked their ass. He got to the free throw line so often. So obviously they're fouling a ton. He got to the free throw line. I mean, Mike was talking about it even more than you were, James, about how many times Kuminga got to the free throw line compared to his team. They just show a lot of times where they are a soft team. You want to see them improve the physicality. You want to see them have a little bit more of a grit to them. And so far, I've been a little bit let down by that, but I think that's nitpicking because, again, it is preseason. You don't want to, show everything you have, and things will be a little bit different during the regular season. But I haven't seen anything in preseason that necessarily alarms me. But if I had to pick one, that'd be it.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. I know they're adding new sort of wrinkles to their offense. It's really one of their main two plays. They're just kind of like tinkering a bit. That'll take a little bit of adjusting. And I mean, I think the starting group, like we talked about Fox and Domas, but I really think all the starters, whether that be Kevin or Chris with that group, or even when Sasha was with that group, like the starters have been rolling offensively. I think you're going to see them be totally fine. That's how they made their money last year. I think that's still absolutely there. And I try to remind myself a lot with a lot of these second units that you're going to see one of De'Aaron or Domas with these groups,
Or Keegan.
or Keegan, maybe De'Aaron or Domas and Keegan. So I think it's going to look a whole lot smoother when we get back to those sort of rotations. I think the offense is going to be fine. I mean, I think it's been a lot of as expected, really, outside of the Kevin Chris conversation and obviously monitoring where Sasha ends up falling in all this.
Okay, we're gonna do this a little bit earlier than normal, but
What about you though, James? You didn't play the game.
Oh, okay, my bad. Yeah, I agree with Brenden that the starting unit and it's interesting how it looked the same with Sasha, it looked the same with Chris or with Kevin at the two. The offense has shown flashes of being beyond brilliant. Like the back cuts, the crazy space that they're creating around the basket for easy buckets. Like this is what you were hoping for, because I think like last year we started to see, and this is, I don't know why we always come back to this. It's because it's the Kings, but it's because this team is kind of built similar to the way that the glory year Kings were built. I mean, really, in my opinion, it is. It's built very similar. And like you have different age ranges and you have like there's some things that are different, but the Princeton style offense, the off ball cutting, the motion, just the ability for everybody on the floor to pass and cut and do things is fun to watch. And I think it lends itself to something else, which is I made this point with Kyle earlier today. One of the biggest attribute that I always respected the most of Rick Adelman was his ability to create a system that was next man up, right? It's one thing to say that, next man up. It's a whole other thing when you're able to succeed without your best players. When somebody goes down, you have a seamless fit with a less talented or close to, whatever the player is. Like very seldom do you see a player be able to just step in and the team just keeps going. And I think that's where we're getting with this team, which is cool because that's what you're hoping for, that you're able to create something where if you do lose Domas for 2 weeks, you can still withstand some of that. If you do lose Fox, if you do lose, even if it's you lose Malik Monk, you still have the ability to keep playing. And it's something that whatever was, we saw it in Sacramento with Rick Adelman. They were the best team in basketball the year that Chris Webber was out almost the entire year because he had microfracture surgery, right? They were the best team in basketball and wasn't even close. They ended up winning like 60 something games without your superstar. And Adelman went on to coach like the Houston Rockets. Rockets won like 21 games straight one year. And it like game 11, I think it was that Yao Ming went down, and game 12, Tracy McGrady went down, and they just kept winning. And so that's where I think we're getting with this team. It's that you're seeing that they have interchangeable pieces that can, they can drop in and they can be super impactful, and the team can keep going. And it's why I don't buy all the BS from the outside that this team somehow miraculously stayed healthy the entire season, and that's the only reason why they were better than other teams in the West. I just don't buy it. This team was better than other teams in the West, like because they had the best offense in the history of, offensive rating in the history of the NBA. That's why they were really good. Like they didn't play defense, but they were still really good. So I still see all of those things in training camp right now. I see it. Like you can see that they're moving without the ball. You can see that they're sharing and that their offense is growing organically. as opposed to having to go out and force in a different player from the outside that just makes everyone else better or so much better than everybody. I don't think they have to do that. I think they're creating something that's sustainable and a system that can withstand injuries in a different way than, any other team that I've covered here in Sacramento. So does that answer the question?
Yes. I think we've seen enough of the offense to see that it's probably still there. I also don't think I've seen enough defense to make me comfortably believe it's going to be that different.
Yeah.
Well, and I guess the original question was what surprises you most. The offense doesn't surprise me though, because again, you had a historic offense last year. I get what you're saying too about the depth, though. I agree. We talked about quality depth and how I view depth as opposed to quality depth, and they've got significant quality depth. This is the most talented Kings team that they've had in a very, very long time since going back to those playoff teams. So, without a doubt, completely agree. I just don't know if that's all that surprising, though.
I don't think it's that surprising. What I'm surprised by is that they've already started to create a system where players can be interchangeable. And where you're already starting to see where other pieces can just fit in seamlessly. And that's when you start having that's like, to quote Doug Christie, that's when you're cooking with grease.
Right.
You're like, hey, I see it. I see something different here where, holy cow, if you do have somebody go down, I I almost like Colby Jones can step in and he can play 15 minutes a night because the system can withstand 15 minutes a night from him. I think Sasha Vezenkov can play 15, 20 minutes a night even while he's getting acclimated to the league. Like, even though I don't think right now he's ready for that, I do think he could because I think the team is built to withstand that. And
Yeah,
so
the only thing I might push back a little on is because we don't know. What's it look like without Domas and Fox, or one of them, for a
yeah,
extended period of time? And to me, that's catastrophic. But
probably not good.
yeah, I don't think it would be good either.
I'm not ready to say that yet, though. I think
Well, Domas for sure, in my opinion, especially when we talk about lack of rebounding. That to me, and again, I do like when they play small. I really do.
I do
But
too.
Domas really answers a lot of problems for them.
No, I agree. I'm not taking anything away from Domas.
Yeah, for sure.
He's incredible, but at the same time, I think you'll be able to figure it out. Like, I do think that even compared to last season when I was like, oh man, like the second, it's like me and Mason Plumlee. You guys hate hearing it, but like that's why I wanted to see them go get him because I knew that the offense wouldn't stop when he left the court. Now I'm starting to think that the offense can withstand a major situation. That kind of leads us into the business of basketball. Like we have, it's almost like dueling factions of national media now. You got your Mark Spears, who are like super pro Mike Brown and telling everyone that the Kings are going to win. Even like I think Charles Barkley has been like a voice saying, "Hey, I really like what's happening in Sacramento." Michael Wilbon came out yesterday and was just glowing. He said that this is one of his favorite teams to watch, and he actually wouldn't be surprised if the Kings win. That they're a number one seed in the West. He said that he thinks that they care about each individual game and take each game seriously, where a lot of teams are going to trick off half the games in the regular season because they know they're going to be there in the end and they're not worried about it. These are all things that I agree with, like that I completely agree with. And then we have the flip side, like John Hollinger, who I like John. He's a good dude, but I almost feel like it's a shtick at this point where, he does a write up in The Athletic and he puts the Kings at number 11 in the Western Conference and missing the playoffs. His projected win total, I think, is 39-43. And like his write up, there's some holes in his write up as well, but just keep coming back to this narrative around everywhere that the only reason the Kings were better than anyone last season was because they stayed healthy and no one else did. And it's just something I don't really buy. Like, did health play a role in what happened last year? Sure, of course it did. But that doesn't mean that that's the only reason they won. And there's no way to predict that the Kings won't be healthy again this season. And so I just wonder from your guys' point of view, why do you think it is that the Kings are become like one of the most polarizing teams when it comes to like the national narrative around the NBA?
I think it's about 5 or 6 different teams in the Western Conference that are probably getting pretty similar treatment. I think that there's just such a big grouping in the after that first tier in the Western Conference. You really probably reach 6, 7 teams fighting for 2 to 9 or 11. So I think that there's a lot of ways you can talk yourself into other teams having gotten better, and talking yourself into how the Kings got better is probably a little bit more nuanced and internal. And these other teams have more straightforward, like the Lakers went out and got more spacing with Gabe Vincent. They got a little bit more depth with the Taurean Prince. You get another year of these guys that are added last deadline, or Memphis adding Marcus Smart, or obviously what Phoenix added, and all these other teams I feel like made a lot of changes, and it's easy to talk yourself into their potential improvement. But what it really comes down to for me is that there's just a huge grouping. I could not predict where the Kings are going to finish this year. It's like such an impossible task. It's somewhere from 2 to 7, 8. Like I don't really know where to place them. So I understand why there's so much variance, because I think that all these teams are so close together, and some of them have more questions than the Kings. But I think that it's really hard to differentiate between all of them right now. And you just need to see a little bit before I personally can really make more defined tiers.
Do you think it's harder this year than it was last year to figure out where they're going to finish?
I think that, I certainly wouldn't have even thought that third was a possibility last year. So for me, last year
Neither.
seemed easier coming into the year.
Yeah, I think going into last year, I think I said that I thought that their height was probably 6, but their low was probably 10. I thought they were between 6 and 10. They'd be battling it out with teams like Portland and the Lakers for some of the final spots. And then that's just not what we got. Like this team was really good. And you're like, "Holy cow." But I think one of my problems is that like if you talk to someone within the walls of the Kings, right? And you say, "Okay, why do you think it is that you stayed so healthy last year?" It's like number 1, we worked really hard. We were on the court all the time. Have you guys seen the Paul George clip
They
where
practice all the time.
well, yeah, but Paul George talked about this. He said that he came into the league with a blue collar team,
Right.
and all they did was practice all the time. And he said they practiced all the time. They they worked really really hard. All the focus was on working to get better and all this stuff. And he says he misses it. He's like he thinks that's why all of them keep getting injured, because no one that a lot of teams aren't working hard and they're not doing the things that old school basketball would have done, or that a blue collar town does. And of course, that's what we get with the Kings. There's a blue collar team that all of a sudden has the flashiest offense in the league. But we saw how hard they worked last year. And I think we attribute a lot of their health to the fact that they worked hard. You can't take out luck. Luck is part of everything, because it doesn't matter how hard you're working. If someone steps on someone's shoe the wrong way on a practice and gets a grade 3 ankle sprain, like what happened to De'Aaron Fox in his 3rd season, it is what it is. I mean, your player's down for 7 to 12 weeks. But I think sort of the other thing is that I think a lot of these guys that are missing, even though a lot of the writers are missing, is that the Kings don't have a player on their roster that has a history of major injury. Like they're, again, let's go to Paul George. We all know he broke his leg, but he's had a knee issue. You go to, I mean, Chris Paul's broken everything at this point. You go to Anthony Davis, he's never been able to stay healthy at all, with, like literally a litany of injuries all over his body. Look at what's his name? Zion Williamson. Zion can't stay healthy. He's had foot problems, he's had weight problems. Like all of these teams have players that have a long history. The Kings don't have a guy who you have to sit there and worry about a 6-hour plane ride swelling up his ankle the size of a cantaloupe, and he's not going to be able to go for the next 2 games. And it's part of the way the team was built. It's part of the age grouping of the team. But I'm also not going to excuse it and say, like, they just don't have injury-prone players. And that's okay to say, too, where every other team in the West, they do.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd push back is just because I know the team would, the notion that the Kings stayed healthy last year, and we talked about this recently, healthy was availability because this team was dealing with a lot of shit. Like they've
course.
had injuries, but they played through them. They had guys play when a lot of teams would have probably sat guys due to injuries. And I think that played to their favor tremendously. But the other thing is, like, going back to Hollinger, who, I haven't spoken to him, but I have spoken to a lot of people throughout the league coming into this season, and there's really, I feel like the common thread among people who don't have a belief in what the Kings do has everything to do with not being a fan of Domantas Sabonis, because he certainly has his critics throughout the league. There's people who don't think that they should have re-signed him, or at least extended him. Excuse me, not re-signed, but extended him, or even given him that money. And that kind of, I don't subscribe to that theory, because that kind of baffles me. Because in the same token, when people will sit there and say, "Oh, you got Domas, he's nice, can't win with him, but I really like Fox," I'm thinking to myself, you're seeing this version of De'Aaron Fox by and large because of a presence like Domantas Sabonis. I mean, let's look. We knew what De'Aaron Fox was before he got here. In fact, there were people that were ready to say, "Okay, I don't think you can really do much with him unless he has a substantial piece next to him, and then maybe." And then you got that. That's what you got with the trade. So there's, I think, a lot of the pessimism when it comes to Sacramento. Look, Kings fans are used to pessimism when it comes to national media. That's just the way it is. But I think, honestly, there's a lot of people who are truly critical of Domantas Sabonis, and I don't think the Warriors series helped him in any way, shape, or form to shake off some of those haters. And it's also, you could also say a little bit about Mike Brown, because there are critics of Mike Brown out there. Great regular season coach. Can you win with him in the playoffs? X, Y, and Z. And I'm certainly not one of them. I think Mike Brown has done a tremendous job with Sacramento. But now you've got expectations on him too. How does a team that goes from, not having expectations, or just having a playoff hoping goal, to being something different? And Mike has talked at length about that. But I don't think I think there's, especially what people will do is look at what Sacramento does, finish third with Sabonis, and that won't silence them, because what they would have expected Sacramento to do was add more to the arsenal, and they didn't. So in addition to being critical of Sabonis, you have those same people who are saying you didn't do enough in your offseason to address clear weaknesses. Part of that is because you extended Sabonis, and that prevented you from maybe going out and getting some of the things you'd really like to identify as areas of need. But that was the goal all along, because now you're ahead of the game. Now you've got all these people lined up. You've got a squad for the next few years here that will have continuity. So there is a method. Some people don't agree with it, and some people think it'll hurt them this year. But as I've said, and I think we all agree, this team could finish less than third. This could be a sixth team, and I don't think that's going to hurt them for a substantial playoff run. Look, Kings had a third seed, and they went to the seventh game of the opening round of the playoff series against a Warriors team that was obviously record-wise finished worse than them, and they lost. So, to me, I think staying out of the play-in game or the play-in tournament is paramount for this team, and I think they will. If I was to bet on it, I think that they will avoid the play-in situation.
Brenden?
Yeah, I mean, I think that betting on that's fair. I think that this isn't the year that I'm expecting them to take that next jump as an organization, though. I think that Monty McNair was on the broadcast while we were at the game the other day. I listened to it back, and talking about how they have so much of this core locked up for 3+ years, like De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murray, and then Malik Monk's really the one. And then you have Davion Mitchell, Chris Duarte. They're going to go into restricted free agency, and not this offseason, but the next, more likely than not. So you have these guys locked up. And I think that you can be patient on when you make your next swing to add your next guy that, in my mind, you need to really take that next jump. So if you float around the same air that you were in last year, I think that's fine. It's about, can you be more prepared going into the postseason to have some success there, have a competitive first round. If you can get into the second round, it'd be phenomenal. But, they have the ammunition to eventually make that move to take the next jump. But I still think that since that hasn't been made yet, I'm kind of expecting a team that's in the same sort of realm as last year. And I don't think that's a bad thing. That doesn't mean there's not things to watch for.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I'm gonna put a number on this team, and I think we'll do this next, I expect them. I will say this: I expect them to win considerably more games than than other people do. And that's because I think they do care about each and every game. I think there is a micromanaged focus on each individual night, and being your best every night, and avoiding long losing streaks, and being cohesive, and all this stuff. I think that is who they are. That's what their identity is. In year one of Mike Brown is who they'll be in year two of Mike Brown. Like, how that plays out over the course of a 7-year window, I don't know. We'll see. But for right now, I still think that they're a team that believes that there are a lot of people who don't have faith in them, and they have to prove everyone wrong again. And so I'm going to expect them to win more games, especially early in the season, than other people are expecting. And so, look, I don't know why the dynamic is, though. I think the Kings are still low hanging fruit. They always have been. I think they were last year. They became like the darling of the NBA and took home every imaginable major award except for MVP and most improved player. Um, so yeah, at the end of the day, I think that there is something about hey, look, everyone's so high on them. I'm gonna put them low. I'm gonna bet against them, and it's a King. So I'm basically betting against a team that for 16 years proved you right, and all of a sudden 1 year proved you wrong. And so I think there's some doubling down. But at the same time, I have a little bit more faith in what's happening here than I think a lot of people do. And I think it's because we're close to it and we're watching it every day, and we know the commitment level that we're seeing, and things can still go the wrong way.
And
But I still don't. Go ahead.
They just have to prove to people that maybe weren't keeping a super close eye that last year wasn't a fluke. From
Yeah.
an outsider perspective, it's like, okay, great, you did it. You were bad forever. Show me this is real.
No, I get it. We rewind back. You remember, I think it was Sean, you were in December where you said this is a good team. And I was like, the fuck?
Is that Sean Cunningham?
That's a little early, bro. And then at Brenden, I think in January, you're like, I agree with Sean. And I'm like, who are you people? What is
Dogs and
happening?
cats living together.
Yeah, complete chaos. Exactly. So we got to March, and I'm like, all right, they just rattled off a bunch of wins after the All-Star break. They're the best team after the All-Star break. Okay, they're good. I'm in. And that's where I was at the whole season. I still want to see them prove it, that they can do it again. But I also don't understand why anyone would think that there's some magic pill to stop this offense that was electric and then went out and added more offensive weapons. Yeah, their defense could be really bad, but offensively, this could be a lot of fun, and we could see a lot of entertaining basketball.
I do like what Mike Brown points out when it comes to the offense and the defense. You had a historic offense. Duplicating that will obviously be difficult, but you're capable because you just did it. And you've got largely the same personnel, but you have so much room to grow defensively.
Yep.
And that is such a, I can see why people look at that optimistically. However, I do see However, because you have so much room to grow, it's possible you could get worse. And I would hope to God that's not the case with this team, because there's not much further you can get, but it is possible. And I do think, look, if they could just get into the top 20, and it's got to be so frustrating for him and his staff. I mean, I know they talk about how in the playoffs they showed the ability to to be a team that defends. I'd also say too, that just happens naturally in the playoffs because you're scouting a team that you're playing 7 times or upwards of 7 times in a series. The same personnel, the same stuff, and there's going to be changes. We saw how they make adjustments, but night in, night out, going from a Detroit to a Milwaukee to a Miami to a Lakers, like that's harder to defend against because your personnel is constantly changing. So, but if they can somehow get into the top 20, I think that would take a big step forward.
Brenden, you had something?
Oh, I mean, I think the same. I'm a little more, I don't know, room to improve is the kind way to say it, right? Like they were bad last year and they could just be bad this year again. But again, offensively, they were great. And I don't think there's much reason to believe they won't be great. Like, I don't know. There are some intriguing changes. We'll see. But I keep coming back to you're probably going to have the same strengths and same weaknesses.
Okay. I think I'm going to add 2 things. Number 1, Mike Brown keeps saying this, it's really easy to go from here to here, but then to go from here to here is really difficult. I actually think that there's another jump before the jump for this team. So I actually think from going from 30 to 48, sure, that's a gigantic leap and that's crazy. But I think this team can go from 48 to 56 and still not be the team that like has a legitimate championship shot. And then that next step is where going from 56 to contender is what the real jump. And I don't think they're there yet. And the reason why I think they can take that jump, again, first half of the season, I think they'll have more wins than a lot of other teams that just don't care. But the other thing that I'm going to keep pointing out is something that Alvin Gentry beat us up with the entire season before. This team was not good at home, and they have no reason to be bad at home. And if they can figure out how to fix that problem, there's like a legitimate 9 wins sitting right there for them. Like without any question. This team won 23 games at home last year. So we can talk about offense, we can talk about defense. It doesn't really matter. Like if you win at home, if somehow you come up with 23, 24, 25 wins on the road, but you can bump your home total up to over 30, which is what good teams do, this team will win 50 something. It won't even be difficult. So
Aaron Fox better still be that clutch guy, by the way. I think he is. I think everything we saw is real, but there were so many close games that he just absolutely bailed them out of that, that better be real. And I think it is. I think we saw it a couple times in previous years in his career too, when he got the opportunity, but just to play the other side a little bit, they got bailed out a lot by De'Aaron Fox, and hopefully he can do that again. Again, I think he will, but that won you a lot of games last year, a lot of close games.
I agree, but my counter to that would, Brenden, if you're better in quarters 1 and 2, there should be at least a handful of games where you don't need Fox.
Yeah.
Where this team did not blow out teams that they should have. And that's another step in their maturation where you throttle a team in the first half. And, then we do get to watch Colby Jones play a bunch of basketball. That again, that's a reality. This team kept it close way too many times. If they just eliminated their opponent in the first half, they would have won a lot more games.
We might get more Keon Ellis.
Three straight threes in that game.
Oh yeah, he's just wearing number 23 as he should.
I may have said something vulgar to James that we don't need to repeat about once he got his first 3 or his second 3. I was like, oh, I wonder what Brendan's doing over there.
Jesus.
Jesus, Sean. Jesus.
I was having a great time.
Mary and Joseph. Yeah, see, that's what he was saying.
I bet you were.
That you were having a great time. You're having a great time back there.
Yeah.
Cool.
Brenden, by the way, I got to give him a major shout out because he bailed me out in a huge way the other day. Because Chris has my coworker has my laptop cord, so the one that we use for our docking station, I always have to grab, and I left it at the station. And Brenden bailed me out with a USB-C. You tried to as well, James. I appreciate that, but Brendan's worked, and he was very patient.
Fox is cutting me a check, so
yeah,
there it is.
Fox
try and make 40 is cutting Brendan a check. Sweet. Okay. Do we have any final thoughts? Brennan, what do you got?
Sean, what went into this decision to go with the black Hurley hat with the blue logo today? Is there like a little blue on the fit that you're complimenting, or
This has this you can't
Oh,
tell, but this
there's
is
blue
a
on the NFL
navy
logo.
blue type shirt. So
Okay.
I'm in the process of washing some of the lids, and went with this one today. So I'm
Do
glad
you have a Hurley
glad you
washer
enjoy it.
too, or
No, I've got a hat washer. You got a
Okay.
hat washer.
oh,
But
oh,
yeah.
I might need to be educated on that one. But actual final thought, I'm gonna little shameless self plug. I had Anthony Slater on King's Pulse earlier today. Got to talk about the Kevin and Chris situation. Got his perspective a little bit on JaVale McGee, having covered him in Golden State and what he can bring on and off the floor, and a little bit about where Sac and Golden State sit in the West. So, little plug, check that out. King's Pulse.
King's Pulse. There we go. Sean, do you need to shamelessly plug anything?
Well, we got baseball's playoffs and the World Series on Fox 40, so people will be turning in for that's kind of interesting to see, Dusty Baker and Bruce Bochy going at it. That's kind of fun. I was actually surprised I didn't see you guys yesterday. James, I understand why you weren't able to make the journey, but
I forgot.
Yesterday they had the food samplings of the new stuff at the arena, and there's some good stuff in there. A lot of a couple things that have like a little chicken and waffle kind of deal. Like there's chicken and waffle skewers. There's a chicken and waffle cupcake that I didn't get to try it, but everyone was raving about. So,
Brennan, are you down with the chicken and waffles?
Yeah, that sounds amazing, and it looked amazing. What's better, Sean, the grilled cheese or the burger?
The burger. And here's why. 2 reasons. The grilled cheese, I wish I could roll the R. Birria, right?
Sure.
Brennan's giving me.
Sure.
The cheese?
Thought I knew how to. I don't even know.
It's a grilled cheese birria sandwich, right? So Mexican food birria, yeah. And so usually you've got the consomme, is it right? Consomme, dip it in whatever. They didn't have that, and the grilled cheese probably had been sitting there for a little bit by the time I got to try it. So I would say in this order of what we sampled, the Kahlua pork, because they have a Kahlua pork with like a macaroni salad type deal. I don't know how much that would be, but it was actually, it doesn't look great, but it tastes phenomenal. The burger was good, the chicken and waffle skewers, and I'll just leave it at that.
We had a night out one time in LA. Me, Sean, Jason Jones, and
here we go.
Sam. We all went to Roscoe's for chicken and waffles.
Sure
that was
did.
my first introduction to chicken and waffles. Their waffles are off the hook, like just incredible.
Sure are. Need one up here in Sac. Definitely.
Yeah, it's not healthy. It's not healthy at all.
No.
So, let's see. Do we have anything else?
He looks out the window.
We're working on some sort of live meetup. Working on it. We're not there yet, but we're working on it. So make sure that you stay on board here. Yeah, I am working on it, Sean. My life is a little hectic right now. I'm trying to balance. I'm trying to trying to figure out the balance. It's been a little bit rocky, but like I'll get there, right? So, there was something else.
Niners look good. Oh, they just lost, but they.
Boy, you bring it up now.
So
Niners look good, but they lost.
Well, no, I mean that's a really good defense, and you lost some players to injury, and you had a chance to win the game with a field goal. Who cares? You're okay. They're all right.
Yeah, you're okay. Except for their superstar running back went down in week 2, and Deshaun Watson was out.
Trent Williams went down, and Debo went down. They'll be all right. They got all day to day.
Yeah, they're all day to day.
Eagles lost. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters.
And they just signed Julio Jones. How about that? That's crazy.
Wait, who did?
The Eagles. Go pick him up. You gonna pick him up?
No, he's washed. Sorry, Julio. You're washed.
With that word,
I'm not picking him. That's your term.
No, doesn't need to be my term.
Yeah, we don't need to go back to why Brenden used that term last year.
No comment.
Okay. Oh no, it just popped into my head. FanFest. What day is FanFest?
Saturday. This Saturday. Coming Saturday.
Saturday. Go online to kings.com/FanFest and get your free tickets to FanFest. I think it's general admission. It's always been a super good time. Sean always goes. I never do.
I'll be
I'll be
there.
there.
I don't need to record someone doing a rookie dance. Although I think Colby Jones probably got some shakes. He can probably move. I don't know. Jalen Slauson. I did have a conversation with Jalen Slauson in the locker room the other night. We randomly started talking about Scal Labissiere and his story, and Slauson didn't know anything about Scal's story, and of course Scal will be at Stockton. I think we should probably give some love to the group that we're seeing. Jordan Ford with the game-tying shot in the final seconds to force us into overtime. There's nothing better than preseason overtime. But I thought Jordan Ford, Colby Jones, Jalen Slauson, that's going to be fun. That's going to be a fun group. And I don't know if Kessler's going to be down there, but there's a possibility for that here and there for Kessler Edwards to be go make a visit. But you add
Jeremy
Chance
Lamb.
Comanche. Oh, yeah. Jeremy Lamb, Chance Comanche, Deontay Burton. And then who's the other dude?
James Akinjo, they traded for with some of their draft picks in the G League
Akinjo.
draft. They traded for Burton last year.
Yep.
And then Jake Stevens, I think, as well.
Oh.
From the Summer League team.
Yeah.
We're having a Mike Dom. Have we got a Mike Dom update?
Yeah. I have not checked on
Did
Mike
he go?
Dom recently.
Did he go overseas? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't know where the Dominator is.
James. Look at James. He's
You got red quick.
Look
You
at
got
him. We
red
just
quick.
lost him. My goodness.
Oh, you guys just kept saying it. You guys just kept saying it.
What, Mike Dom?
Yes.
What's wrong with Mike Dom?
Makes James laugh. Look at that. When's the last time we saw that? We got
Been a little while. Sweet. Okay, I think final thoughts. I don't think I have any final thoughts. It's preseason. I never too high, never too low. And don't read any national reports right now because they're going to drive you bonkers.
Brenden, you want to go see Killers of the Flower Moon with me? It's like a 4-hour movie.
What is that?
It's 4 hours.
God.
It's like 3.5, I think it is.
Are we watching it all at once or
all in one sitting, pal?
Not in 7 sittings, Brenden. No.
When are you going?
Not in 7.
We can figure that out.
Let me know. Let me know.
Hey,
I'll consider.
at least send me a text. I might consider it. Because
it would be a really funny if we did a meetup at
and just watched a movie.
Watched a movie.
No, we're not doing that.
With bunch of listeners.
Probably not that movie.
I felt
that's
bad.
Gonna be a long one.
I'm always encouraging Brenden. He was like, "Hey, hey, nightlife. We can meet up. Blah blah blah. We live close to each other." The one time he hits me up, I'm like, "Oh yeah, this isn't a good night."
What a jerk!
What a jerk!
I had something like that.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. Thanks for tuning in to the Kings Beat podcast. If you're still watching our ridiculousness, please give us a thumbs up. Ratings and reviews help. Subscribe to the channel here on the YouTube if you don't mind. Give us comments. Like we love to ignore your comments. It's cool. That's how we roll. We'll try to do a live show sometime soon. So then that way people can join us here while we're being goofballs. Outside of that, I think it's going to be a really fun, interesting season. We had 17,838, I think was the number the other night. So if you don't already have your tickets, you may have already missed the bus, but I would go on and try to buy tickets if you want to see the Sacramento Kings, because I think it's going to be a tough ticket this year. So that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. For Box 40s, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. See that? This is what happens when I don't get podcast candles. They don't get big closing announcements.
Do you want me to get you some candles?
No, but Brenden doesn't have one. Brenden, do you have your podcast candle?
No.
We have one podcast candle today.
You want to know what it is? I've used it before. It's the Blue Lavender Breeze.
Ooh, Blue Lavender Breeze.
I thought
it comes in like a cool jar, although it's really hot. So I'm losing. Yeah.
All right.
I'd love
Have you ever gotten a Rihanna themed candle?
No, but what a phenomenal idea. If you find me one, let's get one.
Now we know the perfect gift for Sean for Christmas.
Yeah.
Go on your local, what is it? Pinterest? Is that where you can find stuff like that? Or is it no,
I don't get
Etsy.
my candles on Pinterest. What are you talking about?
Well, for
Sounds
that
like
candle,
that,
I'm sure
dude.
you could get that candle. Even if it's like one of those metal sleeves that puts like a thing up on the wall, like a shadow up on the wall of Rihanna.
Sir,
Oh, now we got this thing
sir,
figured
you're
out.
crossing the line.
Sir, you've crossed the line. All right. Again, that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. We'll see you next week or maybe later this week. We'll see.